The user have these two tables as input. The first one is particulars, the second one is values, and the required output he requires in the shape using Power Query. Now the highlighted row in the particular column D is a subtotal of rows above it, which is ABC. Likewise, G is the subtotal of E and F, and I is the grand total of all the rows in that particular table. Now to achieve this with Power Query, I will make a very small change here to define what the subtotal row is and what the grand total row is. So I'll simply create two more columns here to define those rows as subtotal and grand total. So D highlighted is a subtotal, G highlighted is a subtotal, and I highlighted is a grand total. And from here, I go to my Power Query using blank query, and there is a function called Excel current workbook. So when I'm working on my current workbook, I can use this function to bring all those data what I have on my current workbook, and I name it as a source. Now using the source table, I'll reference it to get my two other table. First one is values, so I'll name this as values, and same way I reference it for my other table, which is particular table, and I name this as particulars. So these are my two source file which I'm going to use to get the required output. In the particular table where I have this columns which I created as subtotal and grand total, I'll do one transformation which is fill up. Fill up is a nice function which fill all the null values above that particular row wherever it find null. Likewise, fill down, you can fill down. Similar way I'll do for the grand total. So I will get filled up in each of the blank rows above it. So this is fill up I use to transform in this particular table. Now I go to my value table using merge query. I'll create a new query. The first query I require for the subtotals. So I'll use from the particular table, I'll merge it matching this particular column A to A, and in this I'll expand this for the subtotal first. I'll now name this query as subtotal, and then I'm having D and G, which is the subtotal rows. I will just group it by the column subtotal. So group by is a function which basically summarizes your table with the required one column, two column, or number of column you may require. And let's name it as sum subtotal. And I'll require the operation sum on the amount column. So this gives me a nice small table which is a summary of subtotals, and this null which is for subtotal and one other row, I don't need that. So this is my subtotal. Similar way I'll do this for the grand total. I'll say merge query as new, and this time I'm going to use the grand total to be matched the particular column first to match, and expanding it with the grand total column. And same way I'll do the grouping here, group by the grand total column, and this I'll say sum grand total, and this will be again a sum function on my amount column, and I got this, and I'll rename this as grand total. So I got now my two tables, which is grand total and subtotal, and I have my original value table where I need to have these subtotal and the grand total. So I need to do it with the new query, merge query as new, to get those subtotals. And here I expand it for the subtotal first or rather sum subtotal, and then I do in the same query, I'll say merge query in the same query using the particular column, this time with the grand total, and I expand it for my grand total sum, and then simple merging these three columns, which will give me the final column where I have the subtotal and the grand total. Here I can say amount. So this will be my final output. I name this as final output, and when I close and load, I'll use the close and load to option with only create connection. I don't want to load every query which I created there, only the final output what I require to load in my Excel table here. So let's say I use this as a table, and in this existing worksheet the same place against this final output just to compare. So this is my final output. Now what we require, we got it, but at the same time it is completely dynamic. So let's see, if I put some value in the A, let's say 10, and I simply refresh it, what happens is that value get here, the subtotal get updated and the grand total get updated. If anything I add in these two tables additional rows, so let's say I created n, and same time this n is coming under subtotal of d. So if I put n here and I put value 5, and if I refresh my end result, you'll see that n value is coming, the subtotal is changed, and the grand total is changed as well. So this is the way you use Power Query to reshape or transform your data, make it completely automated. Any changes you make in your input values, it will reflect with the refresh button on your output values. So I hope this answers the question being asked by the user. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.